Hello, and a special thank you for the viewer topic request where we talk about borderline personality disorder and can it develop in adulthood. So I've heard too, sometimes they think that maybe CPTSD can cause borderline personality disorder. A lot of times it happens in childhood due to trauma, but it can develop in response to traumas that happen in adulthood. So we'll get into that. So, traumas that can cause or contribute to BPD. If somebody experiences intense emotional or physical abuse, especially by somebody they trust, such as a partner or close family member, it can create deep feelings of betrayal and abandonment. So, we have to remember that a lot of these like personality disorders, even the narcissist, it's in response to self-preservation mode. And once you're broken down, so there is hope to overcome this, but it's easy to get stuck into these personalities. So this could lead to the emotional instability, fear of abandonment, difficulty regulating emotions that are seen in borderline. There's also trauma such as SA, or we'll call it grape. I think you guys know what I mean. So trauma resulting from this type of violence can damage a person's individual self-worth, trust in others, emotional stability. Survivors of SA may experience severe dissociation, identity disturbance, and interpersonal difficulties. And these are key features of BPD. Also, a significant loss, such as the death of a loved one, divorce, or a breakup from a long-term relationship, can trigger abandonment fears and emotional dysregulation that resemble BPD symptoms. And it starts to infiltrate your relationships. And the emotional pain from this type of loss can be so overwhelming that it disrupts somebody's individual sense of self and also their own stability. And then you deal with betrayal or infidelity. When you experience betrayals such as cheating or being lied to, manipulated in an intimate relationship, these also trigger these symptoms of BPD. The intense emotional pain, fear of abandonment that follows these betrayals can lead to behaviors like emotional outbursts, impulsivity, or a desperate need for reassurance. So you might be always asking, are we okay? Or like a constant need for validation. And chronic stress or exposure to violence, long-term exposure to high stress environments or violence, especially in the living areas or at work, kind of like being in a war zone or being in an actual war zone. Living with an abusive partner or being the victim of ongoing domestic violence can result in emotional dysregulation, fear of rejection, difficulty forming stable relationships moving forward. Medical trauma, a serious or life-threatening illness or injury, especially one that involves long-term suffering or isolation, can contribute to borderline. This vulnerability and also the dependency experienced during a health crisis can cause an intense fear of abandonment or lead to a loss of self-identity, triggering emotional instability. You might feel helpless or dependent on others or a burden, and it starts changing how you react. Abusive or traumatic relationships in adulthood, such as CPTSD, which can manifest similarly to BPD. So when people experience ongoing emotional manipulation, gaslighting, control, it can alter their ability to trust others, to regulate their emotions, and have that stable sense of self. So how adult trauma can lead to it. You have the trauma in adulthood, you start to lose the ability to regulate your emotions. And that's the hallmark feature of BPD, where emotional experiences become overwhelming and difficult to control. Traumatic events, the ones such as relationships, you got the heightened fear of abandonment or feeling rejected. So it can reinforce this fear, leading to behaviors that are aimed at preventing abandonment. Sometimes you might hold on too tightly or pursue too strongly and overwhelm your partner. Adult trauma can disrupt a person's sense of identity. Things are going great throughout your life, and all of a sudden, everything's in upheaval, and it's not what you expect and not what you thought. And now it's almost like you have to rebuild, and it does take time to rebuild. So, betrayal and abuse. It can cause somebody to be overly dependent on others for reassurance or they might even push people away out of fear of being hurt. That's why a lot of these personality disorders like to just discard, because if they're doing the discarding, they're not the ones who were abandoned. It gives them control over the situation. Instead of working through it, they fear the abandonment, but they actually cause it. And that's why when we focus on certain things, you focus on abandonment instead of that this person's there with you, or you're going to work through it. You're going to go down whatever path that you focus on. So when people develop it, sometimes why they develop it is sometimes genetically predisposition, or has certain personality traits that make them vulnerable to this disorder. So as an example, when genetic vulnerability, you might have that genetic predisposition to emotional instability or sensitivity, and that can lead to develop BPD after a traumatic event. It's almost like it pushes you over the edge. You have previous trauma history, could be the final trigger. Personality traits, those who are naturally emotionally sensitive or who struggle with boundaries and self-regulation can be prone to getting this diagnosis or development in adulthood. So childhood trauma is the most common cause, but there is a chance of it happening in adulthood. So there are ways to treat it: trauma-informed therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy can help learn how to emotionally regulate, how to adapt and survive and overcome what you've been through. Thank you for the topic request. One-on-ones are available. Feel free to let me know what you'd like to know more about. We'll get through this one day at a time.